Snow drifted in uneasy spirals over the charred ruins of the wooden stairs, muffling the moans of the dying and the crackle of embers that clung to the shattered ramparts of Castle Black. Somewhere in that white hush, a girl lay half-buried beneath a fallen barrel, her red hair matted to her forehead, blood blooming like melted rubies across the fletching of the arrow lodged just beneath her left collarbone. Ygritte's breathing was shallow, ice-thin, but there was breath. The wind gods gambled with her fate, tugging at the raven-fletched shaft as though it were a loose thread in the tapestry of a brutal night. Overhead, the giants had ceased their bellowing, then horns no longer blared, and the last of Tormund's raiders scattered into the trees, dragging wounded kin behind them. Jon Snow found her when dawn's first light washed the yard in a bleak gray, not quite gold enough to be morning. He was numb from heel to fingertip, plates of blackened ice making brittle armor over his leathers. Yet when he knelt beside her, all the cold in the world could not quiet the hammer in his chest. Ygritte! His voice cracked, an arrow's sigh against the wind. He touched her cheek, warm still beneath the crust of snow. She did not stir. His memory screamed with the sound of Ollie's bow, the thrum that had felled her, but he shoved the thought aside. Live now, he prayed to every nameless northern spirit, live and curse me later. He lifted her gently, ignoring the fresh rivulets that seeped through his glove, and carried her toward the infirmary beneath Maester Aemon's tower. The Black Brothers who remained upright watched in silence. Some spat, others averted their gaze, still blood-hot from the losses borne in the night. Jon's command was the only tether keeping their wrath from finishing what Ollie's arrow had begun. Maester Aemon's blind eyes passed over Ygritte's body with a tenderness that belied his 90-odd years. "The wound is grave," he murmured, fingertips reading the heat that radiated from her skin. But the arrow missed the lung. Fortune, or something crueler? Jon steadied her shoulders while PYP cut the shaft and Gren eased the barbed head clean through. Ygritte's back arched, a strangled howl ripping from her throat as her eyelids flew open. She seized Jon's wrist with startling strength. "Stupid crow," she rasped, breath steaming between grit-stained teeth. "You should have let me die. I never was much good at doing what I should." He answered, voice hoarse with relief and guilt and love he dared not name. She tried to spit, but the glob of crimson phlegm dribbled weakly down her chin. They bound her with honey salves and silk thread, wrapped her in linen soaked in boiling wine. Through every hour of that pale sunrise, Jon sat at her side, hearing in his mind the taunts of brothers who had bled for him, the distrust of the wildlings who had bled beside her, and the thunder of Stannis Baratheon's hooves rumbling closer across the haunted forest. When twilight bled purple over the wall, Ygritte woke again. Fever danced in her eyes, but her fingers found Jon's. "Castle's quiet," she whispered, disbelief thick in her tone. "Thought I'd wake in the sky with the snow bears." "You're here," Jon answered, squeezing gently. "With me." She blinked, lids heavy as snowfall. For now. 3 days lingered like seasons. Bowels of the castle hissed with steaming kettles and burst pipes. The courtyard lay strewn with shattered scorpions and half-burned woolen banners. Stannis arrived in a blaze of red flame torches, the Lady Melisandre smiling at shadows as if they whispered secret victories. Jon, newly appointed steward to the old, broken Lord Commander, found himself stepping between two fires that threatened to scorch him bare. The free folk prisoners shivering in cages along the inner yard, and the king's men measuring them for execution. Ygritte's cot had been moved to a damp cell in the ice storage tunnels, for Maester Aemon fretted that the smoke from the smithies might suffocate her punctured lung. Jon visited at every change of watch. Some nights he read to her, old tales of brave wives who tamed giants with sharpened wits, or simply recounted his failures until her mouth twitched in a half-smile. On the 13th dawn after the battle, Jon found her standing, one arm braced against the stone. She wore a Black Brothers cloak drawn tight around her shoulders, its wool far too long for her height, trailing like a melancholic banner. "You ought to rest," he chided, though admiration softened the edge. "I did rest," she answered, "while your crows muttered about burning us all." She took a slow step, breath ragged. "I smell war." Stannis has offered the free folk safe passage south of the wall in exchange for swords. Her laugh came out a cough. There's the price of freedom. Better than the price Mance feared. Iron chains and the noose.
Mance feared no chance.
She raised her eyes, embers glowing in misted gray. But we will not kneel. Not to iron thrones. Not to red queens. Not even to you, Jon Snow. I ask no one to kneel, he said, pressing a hand to the icy wall for balance of his own. Only to live. She tilted her head, fiery hair catching the solitary torchlight. Live as what? Sheep behind stone walls? Southerners with soft hands and softer bellies. As people. She closed the distance between them, the scent of pine pitch and sweat rising from her skin. The wall was built to keep my folk out. Your brothers would sooner slit our throats than break bread. You'd make a bridge of that gulf? Jon swallowed. Someone must. For a heartbeat she weighed that pledge like an arrow in her palm. Then she smiled, thin, wary but real. You truly know nothing. He almost laughed, but fear of jostling her healing ribs kept him still. Teach me, then. The first council convened in the ruined steward's hall, where melted chandeliers dripped iron tears and Stannis Baratheon's standard of the burning heart crackled beside a tapestry depicting Brandon the Builder. Stannis sat rigid at the head, Melisandre's red gem collar glowing like a coal at his flank. Jon stood to the king's right, feeling the weight of black cloaks behind him. Ser Alliser Thorne's glare, Bowen Marsh's wounded pride, and the uncertain gaze of scores of brothers who had followed him through the fire, unsure where his loyalty smoldered. Opposite them knelt Tormund Giantsbane, braids stiff with frost, and Ygritte, pale under a hood of russet fur. Her eyes stayed fixed on Stannis, defiance burning in their depths. We speak terms, Stannis began, voice as flint-sharp as the cold. Your people cross the wall under my banner. They fight for the realm against the dead who gather beyond. The realm, Tormund rumbled. Your realm ends in those crowns of yours, Southron. My people have their own. You have ashes, Stannis answered. If the tales Jon Snow tells are true, winter comes to swallow us all. My sword burns against that dark. He laid a gauntlet hand on the hilt of Lightbringer. Choose the side of the living. Ygritte's shoulders squared. We choose the side of the free folk. Then choose life, Jon urged, stepping forward. The wall's gates won't hold forever. Better to fight beside us than beneath the dead. A hush settled, broken only by the hiss of torches. Jon felt every eye upon him. Night's Watch brothers questioning his oath. Wildlings testing his heart. Stannis measuring his worth. At length, Ygritte spoke. You want a bridge? She asked Jon. Let it start with this. We are no man's subjects. Grant us land of our own hard-scrabble soil north of Long Lake. Let us hunt, build, burn our dead to the winds. No tithes, no kneeling. Stannis's mouth tightened. I bend, little wildling. Then you will break. She shot back, the tremor in her knees masked by the steel of her tone. And when the snow comes, you'll find your walls mean nothing. Jon's chest ached. He saw maps unfurl in his mind. Thin settlements along the Milkwater, empty keeps abandoned since the Stark kings fell. There is land, he said softly, unclaimed. The Umbers patrol it only in summer. Let the free folk settle there, in exchange for patrols against the others. Ser Alliser spat. Rewarding thieves with our lord's lands? Seems snow's grown soft for the red-haired. Jon whirled. We swore to guard the realms of men, Alliser. Wildlings are men. Men who butchered our brothers at the fist, Bowen Marsh hissed. Ygritte rose shakily. And your men who raided our villages? Slaughtered mothers? These walls have long memories, Crow. The hall erupted, free folk cursing, black brothers shouting. Stannis slammed Lightbringer upon the table, sparks leaping like frightened birds. Enough. I will not govern a rabble. His gaze speared Jon. Settle this before nightfall. Bring me peace or corpses. I care not which, so long as order is restored. He turned on his heel, Melisandre gliding behind. Their exit left a vacuum of cold. Jon faced the gathered shadows of two peoples whose blood still stained the yard. "We will talk," he declared, "without blades." Tormund snorted but folded arms like oak trunks. Ygritte leaned into him, her earlier fire banked into glowing coals. "Words won't mend broken bones," she warned Jon as they filed into a narrow corridor. He met her stare. "Then help me find the right words." It began with small kindnesses. A pot of porridge carried to the cages each dawn, courtesy of Jon's steward recruits. Blankets woven from castle stores, passed through iron bars by novice brothers who remembered the warmth of mothers. Ygritte moved among her people, still limping, voice rough but steady. She spoke of the white shadows she'd glimpsed in the far woods, the ice spiders that left corpses blue as sky. She spoke of Jon Snow's arrow to her heart, which missed, and the arrow to his heart, which did not. Some laughed, some cursed, but all listened. Jon, in turn, called evening gatherings in the shield hall. He paired Night's Watch archers with then hunters, ordered them to trade fletching secrets, set masons from Barrowton to learn how the free folk stacked turf huts against the wind. Each grudging courtesy laid a plank across the yawning chasm. On the 17th night, Tormund shattered the bitterness with a feast. Barrels of sour goat's milk, slabs of bear haunch, roots boiled with treacle, all pilfered from Stannis' reluctant stores. The Black brothers grumbled, but Jon invoked the old guest right, and the torches burned brighter than they had since the battle. Ygritte sat beside Jon on the dais, Stannis' seat conspicuously empty, and lifted a wooden cup. Her cheeks were flushed with firelight and fever's ghost. "To crows who fly with wolves," she toasted, gaze dancing upon him. "May they remember which sky is theirs." Jon felt the weight and warmth of her words settle like snow on his shoulders. He answered, "To wolves who open their gates." They drank. The hall echoed with clanks and cautious cheers. When a then drummer pounded a hollow log, a sworn brother answered on battered kettles. Melodies twisted together like branches in gusting wind. Ygritte's laughter cut through the din, bright as a dawn unseen. Jon had not realized how starved he was for that sound until it returned, filling the hollows of his ribcage with wild, thrumming life. The thaw of trust, like spring, crept slow. Snow still fell in sheets dense enough to swallow whole men, and rumors of white-eyed corpses reaching Crasters keep chilled blood on both sides. In the council chamber, now stripped of sigils save the direwolf of Stark and the flayed man of Bolton looming on parchments from the south, Jon unfurled a rough map. He marked territory between the Milkwater and the edge of the Gift, parcels large enough for clans yet distant from Stark holdfasts. Ygritte traced the lines with a scarred fingernail. "So close. To protect one another," Jon said. "A chain is strongest when links are tight." She studied him. "And what of the kings? Bolton holds Winterfell. He'll skin us for sport." Jon's jaw clenched. "Bolton's hold is not eternal. If he strikes at us, he strikes at Stannis and the Night's Watch." The memory of Ramsay Bolton's letter, promising flayed free folk and a dead bastard, stung like fresh frostbite. But Jon hid the pain. Bridges required pillars of confidence, not cracks of doubt. Ygritte laid her palm over the ink-stained parchment. "My people will need seed, tools, stone. We will provide what we can. They will need to hunt. Your lords guard their forests. We will draft accords. And your brothers?" Her amber eyes searched him, fierce. "Can they swallow centuries of hate with a few dinners and a map?" Jon inhaled the cold air that seeped through every mortar gap. "Not all, but enough. The rest will learn or be left behind." She gave a half-smile. "You speak like a king, Crow. I serve. Then serve this." She leaned forward, their foreheads nearly touching. "Let me ride beyond the cages. Let me speak to the clans still hiding in the haunted forest. Tormund will go. Will fetch mothers, babes, elders too weak to walk. Your king wants swords. I'll bring him men who will fight so their children needn't." Jon's pulse quickened with dread and admiration intertwined. "The road is perilous. The others stalk it. All roads are perilous." She pressed her good hand to the scar where the arrow had passed. I survived one death. I won't flee another. Jon swallowed. Take 10 rangers with you. The best we have. Her eyes softened, but mischief flickered at the edges. You trust me with your crows? I trust you with the future. For a breath they lingered in that fragile gap, snowflakes drifting between their profiles like drifting embers. Then she stepped back, shoulders squaring. We ride at dawn. Word of the expedition spread through the castle like mead through a parched throat. Some called it folly. Others hailed it as the first march of a new alliance. Tormund Giantsbane donned a patched bearskin cloak, boasting that he had wrestled the beast himself. Though the clubfoot Ranger Dywin swore he bought it off a dead Sellsword near the Shadow Tower. Jon watched the riders assemble beneath the wall's looming gate. 12 in total. 5 free folk scouts led by Ygritte, 5 black brothers chosen by Jon for their blades as well as their tempers, and 2 of Stannis' own knights to bear witness. Ygritte swung atop a shaggy garron, her movement stiff but resolute. She looked down at Jon standing in the churned snow. If we don't return in a fortnight, burn the cages and ride south. Winter's teeth will gnaw this wall to marrow. You'll return, Jon said, resisting the urge to clasp her hand before the watchful eyes. The wall still stands. For now, she answered, then wheeled the garron about. The gate groaned open, howling like an ancient beast. Wind swirling through the gap lifted Ygritte's hair in a flare of flame against the white. With a kick, she vanished into the storm, the others following in a ragged line. Jon remained until the gate closed once more, its chains rattling with finality. Only then did he notice Sam beside him, spectacles fogged. You've sent your heart beyond the wall, Sam murmured. Jon exhaled. Aye, best fetch it back before winter steals it. Jon's laugh was thin but real. Aye. Days bled into each other, color leached by relentless snow. Jon took oath esquires from both peoples, set them to digging trenches filled with flammable pitch at the foot of the wall, for if the others came, flame would be the first greeting. At night, he stood atop the king's tower, listening for distant horns. Wind answered only with secrets and the faint shriek of ice cracking deep within the wall's vast belly. Each night he dreamt of Ygritte, her smile a torch in endless gloom, her voice mocking yet gentle, whispering, "You know nothing, Jon Snow." On the 10th day, ravens returned, one bearing a scrap of hide painted with charcoal runes. Safe, it read in the crooked script of Old Tongue. 7 clans had joined their exodus. On the 12th, another bird arrived, feathers rhymed with hoarfrost. Need fire, death walks. Jon's heart hammered. He summoned Alliser Thorne, Ed, and the knight Ser Godry Faring. We ride to meet them, Jon declared. 300 men with torches and oil. Alliser sneered. Abandon the wall to chance? Leave a garrison. The rest march. Bowen Marsh protested in the frost-strewn yard as steel clinked and torches were lit. We are watchers on the wall, not wanderers in the snow. Jon strapped Longclaw to his hip. Tonight we watch the living. They found the convoy on the western slopes of the Skirling Pass, huddled beneath a ridge pockmarked with ice caves. Hundreds of free folk, gaunt, hollow-cheeked, children with blistered lips, clustered in crude shelters of branch and hide. Among them moved Ygritte, her cloak torn, face smudged with soot. When she saw Jon dismount, her knees buckled, but she did not fall. Pride held her upright. We lost 20 to the cold, she said, voice raw. Another dozen to whites. Jon's gaze flicked to the pyres. Long pits dug where smoke drifted lazily into the gray. They won't rise again. No, she glanced past him at the Black brothers forming a perimeter, torches ablaze. You brought light. Good. He reached for her hand, frost-nipped, trembling. I said I would. Under the cavern arch they spoke in hushed tones, of how the dead had taken Craster's keep, how the others walked under a new moon, how Ygritte's scouts had glimpsed blue-eyed giants striding through drifts. Each word etched deeper urgency. We march for the wall at first light. Jon's decision fell like axe to wood. You ride at the center. No debate. She met his order with a weary smirk. A crow giving commands to a spearwife. The world has changed. Not enough, he muttered, but the ghost of a smile crept across his own lips. Sunrise cracked bleak and bruised over the Skirling Pass. The procession wound south, an unlikely serpent of black cloaks, antler helms, bone masks, and rag-wrapped babes. Ygritte rode close to Jon, one hand upon her bow despite the sling that braced her still-healing shoulder. Through freezing squalls they trudged, every mile a song of endurance. When white ravens dived, croaking in tongues dead 4 millennia, Tormund's axe split them mid-air. When skeletal bears shambled from pale mists, Ser Godry's flaming glaive sent them screaming. On the 4th dusk, the wall rose in the distance, a jagged blue ghost, unimaginable in its enormity. Free folk murmured, some fearful, some awed. Ygritte's fingers found Jon's stirrup. "So high," she whispered. "Higher than pride, lower than mercy," he replied. Her gaze lingered on him, reading meanings he feared to voice. At the gate, black brothers flinched when the wildlings poured in. Yet the fires remained lit, and the oil stayed corked. Jon's will, strong as Valyrian steel, held both sides' rage at bay. Once inside, tents sprang in tidy rows, healers moved among the sick, and for one fragile night, Castle Black pulsed with the heartbeat of a brittle peace. Winter pressed hard. Stannis rode for Winterfell, banners snapping crimson and gold over snow dunes. Jon, named Lord Commander on a storm-tossed morning, oversaw the shaping of the Free Folk village just south of the Wall, christened New Hearth by a girl who had never known one. Ygritte became arrow and olive branch alike. She taught shield work to green recruits, traded tales around hearth pits, and when small SQUA. Blees flared, over grazing grounds, over stolen ale. Her sharp bark ended them quicker than steel. One eve, as purple dusk bled over the horizon, Jon found her atop the wall, fur cloak whipping behind her. She stood where once he had sworn his vows. "You climb again," he said, stepping beside her. She smirked. "Didn't climb this time. Took the cage lift like a proper lady." He chuckled, breath fanning in white plumes. "And does a proper lady enjoy the sight?" Her face softened. Beyond them, campfires twinkled like scattered rubies upon vast snow. "It's different seeing it safe." He nodded. "Safe, because you helped build that safety." She eyed him sidelong. "You sound like a bard. Or a fool." "Aye." She leaned her head on his shoulder, ginger locks brushing his chin. Silence stretched, companionable, potent. Finally she spoke, voice hushed. "Do you think bridges last? Or just postpone the fall?" Jon considered the cold stars, distant yet eternal. "Bridges are built to bear weight. If we tend them, reinforce them, they last. If we forget them, they crack." She exhaled, and for an instant he imagined they breathed the same cloud, hearts thawing beneath layers of ice and oath. "Then we keep building," she whispered. He turned, resting his gloved hand over hers on the frost-rimmed Merlin. Their eyes met, two embers defying winter's endless night. Around them, the wall groaned, ancient and patient, bearing witness to something fragile and fierce beginning in the bitter cold. And somewhere beyond the twilight veil, the dead stirred. But so too did the living, bound not by fear or steel, but by the tenuous, stubborn hope of a bridge forged in blood and love and the unyielding will to survive together. Snow sloughed from the wall in silent avalanches, each tumble a reminder that the tallest barriers could shed their own skin when weight pressed long enough. Jon watched a sheet the size of a tavern roof peel free and crash to the yard below, where black brothers and free folk alike scattered, cursing in two accents. The collision sent a plume of frost across the half-finished palisade, coating rough pine stakes in glittering white. When it cleared, laughter fluttered up, thin, nervous, then died beneath the press of howling wind. They were learning to share danger, if not yet bred. Jon descended the rope ladder to the yard, boots thudding on packed snow. The smell of boiled turnips drifted from cook fires. Onions were rationed now, prized like golden dragons. He passed two then boys chiseling arrowheads from spear fragments and paused when one, The taller shifted sideways, exposing an open palm in plain sight, a gesture the free folk used to show a stranger they bore no blade. The boy's eyes never left John's. John returned the sign, curling his cold stiff fingers against the leather of his glove. Bridges were eve-long work. Each greeting a plank, each rumor a rot spot that had to be scraped away. Near the stables, he found Ed Tollett swearing at a stubborn mare refusing her oats. Ed's scarf was dusted white. "She Mrs. Summer?" the dour ranger muttered, patting the mare's neck as though consoling himself. "Don't tell her there's a chance it never comes back." "The wildlings call that fatalism," John said, pulling hay from a bin to show the horse. "They say the world's end is one bad winter away. We southern fools believe in spring." Ed blew warmth into his gloves. "If spring's coming, it best saddle a faster horse." John left him there and crossed to the infirmary, where the reek of boiled wine stung nostrils sharper than any frost. Inside, Maester Eamon's successor, Maester Jonel, a stout woman from Old Town with lamp-bright eyes, was adjusting splints on an Umber ranger's broken fingers. She nodded when John entered but did not halt her work. "5 more frostbites since dawn," she said. "3 children, 2 watchmen. I need more lamp oil if you expect me to keep the gruel thawed." "I'll speak to Bowen," John answered. "We'll light pitch torches outside the tents. Ration our lanterns indoors." Jonel's brows knitted. "Pitch smoke's heavy. Lungs are weak already. Then thin the mix with pine resin." He knelt by a cot where a free folk elder slept fitfully beneath furs too small for her frame. Frostbite had taken 2 fingers. The rest were blackening. John had never asked her name. She spoke only a guttural dialect older than the old tongue, but Ygritte translated her stories on still evenings. Tales of a lover who carved antlers from ice, of a boy swallowed by snow yet singing inside the drift till spring melt freed him. John brushed hair from her forehead. Her eyelids fluttered like spent moth wings. He whispered a promise he was no longer sure he could keep. When he emerged, the sun already sagged behind a pall of gray cloud. It was barely past midday. John followed the muddy track toward New Hearth, the settlement rising south of Castle Black. The village was little more than circles of turf walls, their roofs of woven pine boughs drooping under snow weight, but smoke curled from stone vents like breath from contented giants. Children's shrieks echoed, 2 girls chasing a rag-wrapped ball of straw. The smaller tripped, ramming into John's shin. She stared up, cheeks soot-smudged. A scar shaped like a crescent moon curled under her eye. She giggled, tucked the straw bundle under one arm, and sprinted off. John watched until she vanished behind a heap of fresh-cut logs. At the edge of the settlement, Ygritte labored with a handful of women and 3 knights watch masons, slotting stone into a low wall that would bear the weight of a communal oven. She wore no cloak, only layers of piebald fur and wool. Sweat beaded on her temple even as her breath steamed. John saw the healed scar where the arrow had kissed bone. It shone faintly pink against winter-paled skin. She straightened when he approached, twisting her neck till vertebrae popped. "You brought the mortar mix?" Her tone suggested he'd better. He hefted a small barrel from a sled. "Lime, ash, gravel. Enough for 2 layers." She signaled the masons with a tilt of her chin. They fetched trowels while Ygritte crouched to guide the first stone into place. John knelt opposite, pressing mortar with chilled fingers. "How many ovens will New Hearth need?" he asked. "As many as there are clans," she answered without looking up. "Each one wants their own hearth. But I told them, share fire, share smell of bread. You light half as many." She smirked. "They called me crow-brained. Then I said they could wait longer for loaf. Mine's changed quick." John chuckled. "Give them a year. They'll be writing grain tallies and complaining about taxes." Her smile faded. "They won't kneel, John." "No," he smoothed mortar. "They'll stand. But so will we." After a moment he said, "Maester Jonel says your lung is mending well." Ygritte grunted. "Feels like a weasel chewed it. Still, I breathe." She laid another stone. "Breathe enough to fetch more of my people, if you'd let me ride again." "Spring," John said. "Spring might never come." Then, after the worst cold, he conceded, the woods are dead quiet. Even the shadows whisper louder. She eyed him steadily. You fear what walks. I fear what waits. John's voice barely rose above the whistle of wind. Reports from Eastwatch, blue-eyed bears, whole patrols vanishing. The dead are not sleeping. Ygritte wiped mortar on her trousers. All the more reason to draw the living here. She jabbed a finger at the half-built oven. A wall stops little now. Fire and hearts, that's what keeps cold at bay. John was about to answer when a horn sounded from Castle Black. 3 blasts, stretched and ragged by gale. All talk ceased. The children's screams turned to shrill whistles of panic. Brothers atop the wall leaned outward, scouring the northern horizon. John's blood chilled. 3 blasts. Not wildlings, not rangers return, but others, he breathed. Ygritte's hand found her bow leaning against a stump. She snatched it, strung in a heartbeat. John sprinted for the tether line where his Garen waited. He vaulted to the saddle, shouted to Tormund's hut as he galloped past. Giant's Bane, to arms! The then drums began, deep thuds rolling like thunder across the icy plain. Night's watch bells clanged soon after. Snow flurried so thick John tasted cold iron with every breath. He urged the Garen up the switchback stair road skirting Castle Black's outer wall, hooves slipping on packed ice. Inside the main yard, Bowen Marsh marshaled archers to parapets, while Ser Alicer barked at green recruits frozen in terror. Form ranks, John shouted, sliding from the saddle. He pushed through a knot of brothers toward the outer gate, already barred with oak beams blackened by previous fires. Above, torches rained sparks onto battlements. John clambered a ladder. Wind slapped his face as he reached the walkway. Beyond the wall, the forest looked tranquil under pale light. But from the trees emerged a ripple, like moonlit water twisting through trunks. Shapes moved, gaunt, tall, gliding rather than stepping. Pale swords of ice shimmered in some of their hands. Others carried nothing but chill. Ghost bolted up the steps behind John. Fine white fur bristling, a silent snarl exposing fangs that dripped foam. The direwolf's eyes burned red, fixed on the approaching wraiths. John drew Longclaw. Archers, he called, voice cracking. Aim for the ones behind. Their slaves fall first. Feathered shafts darkened the gray sky. Where arrows struck undead, brittle flesh shattered like crockery. Yet the whites crawled on, shards dangling from sinew.
Von Sdalovet bile.
More poured from the tree-lean. Walrus fat raiders who died last moon, their wounds still open. Watchmen who vanished on patrol. Even a giant, frost-patched hide ripped, jaw hanging by a string of muscle, shambled forward, iron chains rattling at its wrists. And there, weaving between corpses, the others, eyes blue as frozen lakes, skin translucent. Tall as lords, thin as starvation, they stepped soundless on top of drifts. John had seen one at Hardhome, only one, and nearly died. Tonight 3 approached. Behind them loitered more, faint ghosts in swirling snow. A hiss of fury rose along the wall. Wildlings clutched obsidian daggers, gifts forged in molten pits at Dragonstone. Blacksmiths had chipped dragon glass arrowheads by the thousand. John raised Longclaw overhead. Light the pitch! Torches bobbed, igniting trenches. Blue flame leapt along channels carved at the base of the wooden rampart. Heat slapped John's face but could not banish the unnatural chill seeping ever closer. An avalanche of flesh slammed the gate. Whites clambering, clawing, their dead weight forming ladders of bone. Brothers jammed spears downward. Ghost lunged through gaps, tearing limbs with savage jerks. Atop the palisade Ygritte appeared, bow in full draw, eyes narrowed. She loosed 2 arrows in breath span, one shattering a white skull, the other burying deep in a pale cavalier's throat. The other recoiled, crystalline blood steaming, but did not fall. John glimpsed Ser Alicer battling beside a free folk spear wife. Back to back, the absurdity forgotten in the face of death. Lightning flickered without thunder. The temperature plummeted a knife's width further. Ice crystals formed on eyelids. Still the dead climbed. The giant corpse reached the gate. It lifted a felled pine trunk, swinging like a club. The oak beam cracked. Brothers scrambled. Jon roared, sprinted down the stairs 2 at a time, Ghost at his heels. He met Ygritte halfway. She shoved obsidian arrows into his fist. "Eyes," she panted. "Aim true." They burst onto the courtyard moments before the gate split. The giant squeezed through, shoulders scraping posts. Jon skidded under its first swipe, rolled to regain footing, and plunged Longclaw into the giant's shin. The blade rang against frozen bone, stuck fast. He tore free just before a foot stomped where he'd lain. Ygritte danced along its flank, loosing obsidian-tipped shafts into joints. Elbow, knee, neck. Steam rose where arrows struck, the magical glass leeching life. But still it lumbered. Brothers hacked at ankles like lumberjacks felling a trunk. Snow churned into red slush. With a roar deeper than any human throat, Tormund Giantsbane vaulted from the wall's inner ledge, swinging a blacksmith's hammer two-handed. He landed atop the giant's shoulders, driving the hammer down onto its skull. Bone cracked, the corpse reeled. Tormund hooted, a madman's laugh. Then the cranium split. Icy mush geysered out, spraying all within reach. Jon yanked Ygritte aside as the corpse toppled. The ground trembled, castle stones groaning. Dead still poured in behind, but the breach narrowed, giant meat plugging part of the gap. Jon stabbed wights who scrambled over the mound. For each that fell, 2 more clambered. Then came a sound he would remember till grave. Crystalline shriek, like ice splintering under the weight of a mountain. Another stepped through the cracked gate. Armor of ice plates hugged its form. A helm crowned with spires glittered starbright. In its hand, a sword thin as frost veil. Many men froze. Ghost bared teeth, but even the dire wolf backed 1 pace. The other lifted its blade and traced a slow arc through the air. Frost spiraled from the steel, smothering torches in its path. Darkness deepened. Jon raised Longclaw, heart hammering. Ygritte beside him knocked obsidian, aim steady. They exchanged no words, none fit the moment. As the other advanced, its steps left runes of rime on stone. Jon moved to intercept, but a dozen wights lunged, forming a protective veil. Longclaw flashed, shearing rotted necks. Ygritte's arrow shredded 2 more, the shards of dragon glass sizzling. The other regarded the mayhem with an expressionless face, then advanced again. Jon felt his breath grow ragged, as though his lungs filled with slush. He met its gaze, an abyss of ancient cold. With both hands he swung Longclaw. Valyrian steel met ice. Scream of metal on sorcery. Sparks white and violet burst. The impact jarred his bones, but he held. Ygritte circled, seeking a window to fire. The wights harried her. Pyp and Gren, bloodied yet unbowed, charged to assist, blades flashing. Jon's world narrowed. 1 foe, 1 sword. The other moved with terrible grace, each cut swift as blizzard gusts. Twice its blade clipped Longclaw's guard, coating the steel in frost ferns that melted as quickly under ghost fire of the sword's forging. They circled beneath the shattered gate, footwork crunching snow into powder. Jon's muscles ached, breath wheezed in cold air. He feinted high, then pivoted low, sliding Longclaw at the other's shin. The creature parried with no more effort than flicking snow from a cloak. The thrust, tip grazing Jon's ribs, slicing leather. Pain-seared, flesh burned by cold. Ygritte loosed an arrow. The obsidian head struck the other's shoulder. For a heartbeat nothing happened. Then cracks spidered across the armor plate. The other staggered, turning its glare upon her. Jon saw his chance. He lunged, driving Longclaw upward through fractured mail into chest. The creature emitted that crystal shriek again, louder, and exploded into shards of ice fine as beach sand. A chill wave erupted, flinging Jon backward. He crashed on his back, vision awash in white dust. Silence fell. Wights nearest collapsed, severed from puppeteer. Others farther away still fought, but confusion rippled. Some staggered, some froze mid-charge. Brothers rallied, shouting, hacking. Tormund's hammer rose and fell, smashing skulls like gourds. Ygritte knelt beside Jon, tugging him upright. He winced at rib pain. Fingers found sticky blood beneath his coat. She checked the wound quickly. It wept but had not frozen. "You breathe," she whispered. "So far." Jon drew a draft of burning cold air. Forced stand. The fight waned. Without command, the dead lost coherence. Archers targeted writhing forms still crawling. Oil flasks were hurled. Flames devoured. By dawn's pale approach, only piles of ash and splintered bone littered the yard. Exhausted men slumped. Some wept, joy or grief indistinguishable. Snow kept falling, gentle now as if battle had quelled fury. Infirmaries overflowed. Maester Jonel triaged by torchlight. Jon oversaw the stacking of white corpses for cremation beyond the walls. Every inhalation scraped his chest like broken glass. At midday he found Ygritte atop the king's tower, staring north. Her bow dangled loosely. Hair tangled by wind whipped across her face. He stepped beside her. Below, smoke from pyres drifted in iron-gray plumes. "You faced death's father," she said softly. "I saw him at Hardhome. I feared him then. I fear him still." Jon followed her gaze. The forest again calm, as though nothing had spilled from it hours prior. She touched the tear in his coat. "Your blood's frozen." Her thumb came away crimson. She sucked a breath, wiped it on fur. "Maester should stitch you." Later, he watched cinders spiral up, swallowed by sky. "Ygritte, your arrow saved me." She shrugged. "Told you, you know nothing. Fighting others is no different than hunting shadowcats. Wait, find the joint. Pierce." He smiled despite aching ribs. "Shadowcats don't shatter. Some do if you hit 'em right." She looked at him, eyes bright. "We lost many? Too many." He rattled names. 19 brothers, 37 free folk, 2 of Stannis's knights. Their witness now ash. Ygritte's jaw clenched, but no tears fell. Wind gusted, howling between crenellations. Jon said, "We stood together. The wall held because we held." "Today," she answered. "Tomorrow. Tomorrow we hold again." She leaned into him, head against his shoulder. They stayed thus until bells tolled for evening rations. Days passed in fevered repair. The breach at the gate became a scar of charred beams and black-hammered ironwork. Brothers and free folk trained side by side. Jon implemented rotating watches. 2 free folk to each ranger, each pair sworn to signal at first sight of blue eyes. Trust grew in trenches of necessity, but suspicion brewed south. Letters arrived from Queen Celis at Castle Stannis near Winterfell. Reports of Bolton outriders raiding small folk, of northern lords wavering in allegiance. In every missive, a note of disdain for wildling rabble residing behind the wall. Jon burned the letters after reading. He could not spare firewood, but he spared ink and parchment to craft polite refusals. The free folk stay, the knights watch neutral, the realm at stake. One dusk, Bowen Marsh confronted him near the rookery. "Lord Commander," he began, voice tight, "our vows forbid alliance. We are watchers, not hosts." "We are watchers," Jon agreed. "Of the realms of men. They are men. Some," Bowen spat, "others butchered our brothers. How long before they turn coat?" Jon met his gaze. "How long before you do? If fear guides you?" Bowen flinched. Jon's tone softened. "I trust your service, Bowen. Trust mine." The older man inhaled, nodding slow. "I pray your trust holds, my lord." Trust, Jon mused later, was not coin minted once and spent freely. It had to be earned daily like bread. He earned it digging graves, sharing salt pork, sparring with ends. Yet he sensed it slipping through cracks wider than frost fissures. On a bleak morning, when wind smelled of distant pine smoke, sign of camps moving south, Samwell Tarly returned from Old Town. He arrived ragged, cheeks sunken, but carrying books strapped tight under his cloak. He embraced Jon in the yard, tears freezing to lashes. "Dragonglass," he whispered. isn't the only answer. I found records as Ygritte of forging Valyrian steel anew. Hope flared in Jon's chest brighter than any forge. They pored over crumbling tomes by lamplight. Sam traced diagrams of crucibles, dragonfire bellows, spells half-scribed in High Valyrian. Jon saw possibilities, arming every ranger with blades the dead could not withstand. Yet dragonfire was myth and dragons were. He paused, remembering rumors from the south. A queen with 3. If rumor proved true, alliances might breathe flame. That night Ygritte joined him in the library alcove. She ran a fingertip over the ink sketch of a serpent-winged beast. You want to tame dragons now? Crows grow bold. Desperate, Jon corrected. She closed the tome, leaning close. Desperate folk do reckless things, like trust enemies, or love them. Her confession hung in candlelit gloom. Jon swallowed. Enemies no longer. Friends then? She teased. He touched her cheek, scarred but warm. Friends, he agreed, though his heart thundered a wilder word. She kissed him, gentle yet fierce, a promise forged with more certainty than any oath he had taken in stone seps. The taste of her sealed cracks winter had carved in him. Morning found them parted by duty. Scouts reported banners near the gift, Bolton men raising a crofter's hamlet. Jon convened a council. Night's Watch captains, free folk leaders, Maester Jonel, Sam. Debate blazed hotter than hearth fires. We move south, Tormund declared. Hack-flayed men, till they're too busy bleeding to chase babes. Bowen Marsh objected. Our vow forbids war for lords. Jon answered, our vow protects the realm. Bolton's cruelty drives small folk north, overloading stores, spreading plague. And if Bolton breaks us, the wall weakens before the true enemy. Ygritte leaned forward. Free folk will fight, but not for crowns. For survival. Then we fight side by side, Jon said. Sam cleared his throat. Stannis marches on Winterfell. If Bolton falls, northern lords may rally behind Stannis or break apart. A war below while the dead gather above. Jon finished the thought. Disaster. Yet inaction meant worse. He ordered a sortie, 50 mounted rangers, 50 free folk archers, Ghost leading the vanguard. Their aim: harry Bolton outriders, rescue refugees, leave Bolton stretched thin. Before dawn 2 days later they rode out. Snow-muffled hooves, breath-plumed. Ygritte rode near Jon, her Garen nimble over drifts. Sam remained to safeguard books. Bowen remained to guard the wall. Jon's heart remained neither north nor south, but in a precarious space between. They crossed the gorge by noon, following a frozen tributary. Pines loomed, load groaning under ice. Tormund's laugh shattered quiet when a rabbit bolted and a then arrow pinned it mid-spring. They lunched on game, meat half-frozen, tongues numbed but spirits high. At dusk, ashes of a settlement came into view. Scorched hovels, sheep carcasses splayed open. Flayed skin pinned to stakes. Jon dismounted, fists clenched. He recognized the sigil carved into a barn door. The flayed man. Smoke still tickled nostrils.
No survivors.
Ygritte knelt by a small corpse frozen in kneeling posture. Head severed. She closed its eyelids. Southrons flay children. Her voice was a rasp. You wonder why we call them kneelers. Jon placed a hand on her shoulder. Words failed. They built a pyre, burning bodies to free them from white fate. The smell rolled on wind like burnt sugar and rot. That night they camped in hollow ground shielded by felled logs. Tormund drank goat milk laced with rum, singing. Ygritte sat watch with Jon. Stars glimmered beyond cloud breaks. She spoke of old giants' burial mounds that whispered songs if you pressed ear to snow. Jon listened until his eyelids drooped. She nudged him. Sleep, Crow. I'll guard. I'll take second watch, he murmured. Morning came sharp. Scouts spotted Bolton outriders 2 leagues south. Jon formed ranks along a ridge. Snow hid them as horses cantered below. 4 flayed-man banners, 30 riders. At his signal, arrows rained. Bolton men toppled like ninepins. The survivors wheeled, only to meet Tormund's charge. Steel clashed, screams sliced cold. Jon faced a captain sporting a cloak of skin sewn with dark hair. Rage lent speed. Longclaw cleaved the man's helm and skull in one stroke. Another fled. Ygritte's arrow found his spine. Free folk ululated victory cries. Jon ordered silence. The battle noise might draw more. Among Bolton's saddlebags they found parchments. Orders from Winterfell commanding extermination of any wildling infestation south of the wall. Jon pocketed them, proof for Stannis perhaps, or for northern lords still undecided. They rescued 2 crofter children tied to a packhorse, a boy and girl, half-starved. When freed, they clung to Ygritte's legs until she hoisted them onto her garron. Tormund tousled their dirty hair. "Fight like your mother next time," he said gruffly, making them grin shyly. Jon directed the column homeward, pace grueling through waist-deep powder. On the second night, the aurora danced, curtains of green and purple rippling like banners of unseen kings. Free folk knelt in awe. Black brothers stared silent. Ygritte murmured a song of the sky swimmer goddess who carried warriors' souls. Jon watched colors shimmer across her freckled face, knowing war could steal such moments forever. They reached Castle Black battered yet triumphant. Jon presented Bolton orders to Maester Jonel for copying, then dispatched to Queen and Lord alike. Rumor blew swift, Bolton brutality stoking Northmen's ire, free folk aiding Night's Watch, an uneasy legend forging. But triumph carried cost. Fever gripped rangers with wounds. By dawn 3 lay dead, eyes blue. Jon ordered immediate burning, but mutters arose, brothers uneasy at torching fallen friends. Ygritte led the pyre rite, chanting free folk dirges that spoke of windgates and the mother's hearth. Some brothers wept at words they couldn't understand. As winter deepened, new hearths' ovens burned steady. Bread scents threaded Castle Black, blending with pitch smoke. Children from both peoples played in shadow of the wall, games of spear throw and snow bear hunt, their laughter as defiant as any spear. One crisp twilight, Jon and Ygritte walked the top of the wall again. Rime filmed their cloaks. Below, torches traced the yard in flickering constellations. Ygritte's hair caught moonlight like copper wire. "The bridge stands," she murmured. "For now," Jon replied. She turned him to face north. Another storm gathers. Dark clouds massed. Faint streaks of lightning glimmered deep inside. Jon sensed more than weather, a pulse of cold intent. "We'll hold," he said. She kissed him once, soft, lingering, snow melting between lips. When they parted, she smiled that half-wild grin. "We will," she echoed, "because the wall is only stone and snow. But we," she tapped his chest, "we are fire." They stood together while the storm marched closer. 2 sparks embraced against an ocean of night, trusting that bridges could outlast tempests when hearts refused to yield. Wind clawed across the battlements like a restless beast, rattling loose shutters and setting torch flames wagging in frantic, orange tongues. The storm Ygritte had spied at the horizon days earlier arrived with unrelenting fury, snow whipping sideways, the walls ancient ice singing under gusts that tasted of deep-world winter. Yet the fires of Castle Black burned on, defiant braziers lining every parapet, their coals nursed by free folk children who had never before been allowed so near Blackstone ramparts. Jon Snow paced that wall top hour by hour, cloak flapping, eyes narrowed against flying crystals. Far below, the settlement of New Hearth lay half-erased beneath drifts, but yellow lamplight gleamed through canvas flaps and turf hut skylights, proof that breath and bread persisted. Each glow was a heart he had sworn to protect. Free folk, crow, kingsman alike, though protection now meant more than valor. It meant scourging treachery from within, forging tools from myth, bargaining with queens who ruled seas away. Rumor had reached the last hearth watchpost that Stannis Baratheon's banners advanced on Winterfell, snowshoeing over dunes of white as tall as keep walls. Bolton outriders harried them, but northern lords, wary of a flayed man's mercy, sent token aid or none. Victories flickered in raven ink, a Umber holdfast yielding without bloodshed, a Mormont galley ferrying hardy spear wives up the shivering sea to bolster Stannis' rear. Yet, with each report came darker tidings. White packs prowling the Dreadfort's dungeons, spectral wolves slaughtering sheep outside Deepwood Motte. A night sky pulsing green even at no moon, as though the world's roof had cracked and other fires shone through. John studied a frost-rimmed map inside the Lord Commander's solar while Maester Jonel stoked the brazier. Nearby, Samwell Tarly spread books across a table, volumes pilfered from Citadel archives and hidden under cloaks during his frantic flight north. Diagrams of crucibles, notes on dragonbone flux, alchemical incantations in High Valyrian, a lexicon of secrets the Citadel had long deemed heresy or impossibility. They spoke of reforging black iron with dragon fire, binding folded steel to shards of glass that drank moonlight. John traced a gloved finger over one line. Only in the breath of the world's eldest children shall Ice's doom be forged anew. Dragon's breath, he murmured. Sam nodded, eyes still ringed by the dark half-moons of exhaustion. If Daenerys Targaryen truly sails for Westeros, and if she still commands her three, a flock of ifs, Maester Jonel muttered, but she did not scoff. Her own reading of the battlefield had convinced her that steel and courage alone would fail when the others marched in earnest. Even 3 dragons cannot be everywhere. Then we breed more, said Ygritte from the doorway. Snow powdered her shoulders, hair knotted by whirling sleet. She shrugged off her cloak and stepped closer, steam rising from damp furs. Your Southron tales speak of dragon eggs buried in crypts. Aye? The free folk know caves along the Frostfang foothills where firestone grows warm under snow. Perhaps eggs wait there, sleeping. Sam's eyes widened with scholar's hunger. Any remnant of Valyria might hold such relics, but the spells to quicken them died with the freehold. Unless dragons themselves sing them awake, Jonel finished, or unless a sorcerer of red fire stokes their stone. We have neither. John lifted his gaze to Ygritte. But we have hope. A bridge, you said. Stone or wood cannot span this gulf. Only faith can. She smiled, half wild, half soft. Faith and stubborn fools. That night, as the storm finally exhaled its last and dawn bled wan pink over the frost-hazed forest, a rider arrived from Eastwatch by the sea, one of Cotter Pike's swiftest, cheeks raw, lashes iced. He collapsed in John's antechamber, thrusting a sealed tube into PYP's hands before fainting. The missive bore Pike's broken seal and 4 words scorched by candle soot. Hardhome overrun ember blue. Hardhome. Refuge once promised to thousands of free folk, site of John's own horror months earlier, had been retaken, repopulated by desperate clans after the Night King's probing attacks eased. Now it was gone again, swallowed by azure flame and white silence. John stood stiff, throat working, as Ygritte pressed a fist to her lips, eyes shining with unshed grief for kinsfolk she'd never known yet still claimed. We ride, John said. Bowen Marsh opposed, face bloodless. The wall cannot be left. Rangers scarce enough. We ride, John repeated louder, and slammed a mailed fist upon the map. We take every boat at Eastwatch, every longship Tormund can spare. We sail tomorrow. Mutters coiled round the council like smoke. Tormund himself, sitting cross-legged on a keg of salt beef, slapped his thigh. A true bear's raid, he crowed. We'll carve the dead second arseholes and feed 'em their own. Jonel folded arms. Your optimism outpaces supplies. Eastwatch stores are thin, and sea storms thick this season. Half your men will freeze before sighting Hardhome's cliffs. Half will fight, Tormund retorted. And if the free folk at Hardhome are whites already? Sam asked quietly. The room fell to hush. Will you cut them down? Your kin. Tormund's smile faltered, but then a grave calm overtook his features. Aye, he said, as they would cut me if I walked again in blue chains. Ygritte stepped beside John, slinging her bow over shoulder. You'll need a spearwife who speaks the clan's tongues. I ride too. No, John's answer drew everyone's stare. He softened it with gentle conviction. You stay, hold New Hearth, keep the bridge strong. If we fail, the wall needs you. Her eyes flashed anger, but only for a breath. She saw the fear behind his command and the trust buried within it. She exhaled, nodding once. Then bring them back, Crow. He clasped her forearm. I will. That night they lay together in the loft above the library. Fire crackling below, scrolls shoved aside to make room for furs. Outside, the sky cleared, unveiling a river of stars so bright the snow faintly glowed. Ygritte traced the scar on Jon's ribs where the other's blade had grazed. Cold cut you, she whispered, but you didn't break. My heart has stronger iron, he answered. She smiled, though worry crept like frost spider lines around her green-gold eyes. I'll still breathe when you return, she promised. I'll need to argue about ovens and taxes. I'll hurry then. He kissed her hair, inhaling pine and smoke. Fear coiled in his belly. Fear of the sea, fear of unseen foes, fear of leaving the one person who made the frozen world feel like dawn. But duty pressed heavier. He had chosen a crownless kingdom, a strip of land between ice and civilized scorn, a people that did not kneel and brothers who barely trusted their own shadow. If he turned from them, the bridge would topple. Eastwatch reeked of bilge water and desperation. Waves crashed against black stone, flinging brine onto ramparts. Cotter Pike met Jon at the quay, beard caked with salt, one eye bloodshot from sleepless nights. Hardhome's a graveyard, he rasped. Last raven came 3 days past, said blue flame poured from the hills. Said the sea itself froze solid 10 yards from shore. Jon shut eyes briefly. We still sail. Pike spat into surf. I thought you'd say that. Got 3 galleys fit to float. The rest leak worse than Aseptus confessions. Tormund boomed laughter and clapped Pike's back, nearly pitching the thin man into water. 3 galleys. Enough to carry giants. Pike scowled. Giants best row, then. Loading took hours of cursing. Free folk archers slung bundles of dragonglass-dipped arrows. Blacksmiths hefted barrels of pitch. Maester Jonel, refusing to remain behind, supervised a meager infirmary hold stocked with kelp tinctures and crabshell salves. Sam boarded with books wrapped in oilskin. He insisted knowledge would serve better than sword. Just words, Pike muttered, eyeballing the extra weight, but he allowed it. And so under gray sky they rowed east, hugging the forlorn coastline. Iced foam clumped to oars. Rigging creaked like dying gulls. Night by night, they beached on stony coves to sleep in damp cloaks, ghosts sniffing dunes for corpses that sometimes walked. Twice they burned small packs of whites, former fishermen still clutching broken nets. On the 5th day spires of Hardhome rose, charred silhouettes against an aurora that flickered day-pale even under cloud. The harbor water lay weirdly motionless, a slick black mirror. As the galleys glided closer, ice thickened beneath ribs, scraping keel. Sailors poled through slush until the hulls kissed a solid sheet. They disembarked onto frozen sea, boots crunching crystalline crust that moaned with each step. The settlement above looked blasted. Long halls collapsed inward, nets fused stalagmite-like in midair, every surface crusted in rime. No corpses dotted docks, only faint dark stains where blood had steamed then frozen. Jon signaled silent advance. Rangers fanned, blades drawn. Snowflakes drifted, yet a hush heavier than snowfall blanketed everything.
Samhiv dregit bret, fagging spectacles.
Too still, he whispered. They reached the main square, remnants of a sacred hearth in its center. There, black char traced a spiraling sigil on ice. 3 loops entwined, reminiscent of children of the forest carvings but harsher, angles sharper. Within sat a single figure, a woman, naked, skin luminous blue-white, hair streaming stiff icicles. She knelt as though in prayer, eyes shut. Jon approached slowly, every instinct screaming danger. When 5 paces remained, her eyes snapped open, pupilless, cerulean.
Agesp escaped Sam.
The woman's lips parted, frost plumes spilled. Then she sang. Not words but pure tone, high and fragile, like glass chimes in winter breeze. The sigil at her feet glowed, veins of azure radiating outward. Ice cracked under Jon's boots, cold seeped through Saul's. He raised Longclaw. "Break the circle," he shouted. Tormund hurled his hammer. It struck a loop, shattering crust. Light sputtered. The woman's song wavered into shriek. Suddenly the silent streets erupted, shapes rising from drifts, bursting from ruined boats, clawing through roof holes. Whites by the hundred, eyes ignited, converging. Arrows flew, dragonglass shards stapling dead flesh. Maester Jonel's pitch bombs bloomed flame. The front rank of whites faltered, but others clambered over scorched husks. Jon ducked a swinging cleaver from a skeletal raider, riposted, severed spine. Ghost leapt beside him, tearing throats in sprays of hoarfrost. Sam brandished a dragonglass dagger, face sheet white. He plunged it into a snarling child white. Tears glazed his cheeks even as he twisted. The thing hissed and fell. Within the sigil, the ice woman pitched backwards, palms pressed to runes pulsing frantic. Jon realized she was no puppet. She was a keystone. He charged. A gaunt knight stepped into his path. A true other, armor shimmering moon silver. Its sword hissed frost. Longclaw met it, sparks and rime erupting. Their dual carved arcs of steam in frigid air. Tormund, seeing purpose, roared and leapt over battling pair, swinging hammer at the kneeling woman. She thrust a palm. Shards of ice shot forth, impaling Tormund's shoulder, knocking him sprawling. But the blow disrupted her chant. Light dimmed, whites staggered mid-stride. Jon parried, feinted, then slid Longclaw under the knight's guard, cleaving ribs. The other shattered like brittle glass, snow whirling. Without pause, Jon pivoted, sprinted to Tormund's side. He yanked a shard from the big man's flesh. Blood spurted. Tormund cursed but grinned. Together they advanced. The woman's eyes burned fierce, yet fear rippled across her frost-veined face. "Lay down," Jon commanded. Her mouth shaped a sound, perhaps a plea, but he would never know its meaning. He sank Longclaw through her chest. Ice splintered. A sound like distant thunder cracked overhead. A wave of blue light burst, raced across square, up walls, through streets, dissipating at cliffs. Every white froze, then collapsed into motionless carcasses. Silence returned, now heavier, reverent. Snowflakes fell again as ordinary snow. Jon knelt, breathing hard. Tormund winced upright. "Damn cold witch," he muttered. "Takes more than fancy ice to kill a free folk chief." Maester Jonel hurried over, binding his wound. Sam surveyed devastation. Many dead lay around, both white and living. 9 brothers, for free folk, 1 Eastwatch Marine. Jon closed each slack eyelid he passed. But among ruin they found survivors. In a half-collapsed temple basement, near 40 villagers huddled. Women, elders, babes. Frostbite gnawed many. 2 had lost fingers. They spoke in broken tongues, half mad with grief. Yet they clutched Jon's gloves as though they'd woken from nightmare. One graybeard told Ygritte's language, made of a white witch who came riding storms, promising protection if they knelt. Those who refused became ice slaves. Those who knelt were given chance to flee on skiffs, only to be hunted later for sport.
Jonskutsut.
The others were evolving, seducing, sowing fear. They burned bodies, destroyed sigil stones, then marched survivors to galleys. Wind rose again, but sails caught it true, and they rowed home upon seas rattling with broken ice. Castle Black welcomed them with cheers and weeping. Ygritte stood on the quay as Jon disembarked, flinging arms around his neck before any formalities. He tasted salt tears and smelled hearth smoke in her hair. Later, as survivors warmed near ovens she had fought to build, Jon addressed the whole yard. "Hardhome falls no more. We saved who we could, but the others will strike again. They tempt, they trick, they enslave. We must be more cunning than they. We must be one folk." A roar answered, part cheer, part vow. Yet corners remained where mutters bred. Bowen Marsh watched from shadows, lips thin. That night, ravens from Winterfell brought mixed tidings. Stannis encamped beneath the castle, snowbound, engines useless, supplies dwindling. Ramsay Bolton demanded parley. For trade of prisoners. Though the letter smelled of ambush. Worse, reports claimed Bolton secretly courted Karstark and Serwyn men with gold and marriage pacts. The north was fraying as surely as Jon's own cloak edges. In torchlit council Ygritte slammed her fist. We take the free folk south. Smash Bolton's gate. Show your brothers who truly guard the realm. Sam shook head. Leave the wall bare? The Night King watches. Tormund belched. We split half-hold, half-ride. Giants might like a castle feast. Jon pressed fingertips to temples. Duty tore him along 3 axes. Protect the wall, crush Bolton cruelty, aid Stannis who, for all faults, believed in realm's defense. Finally, he looked to Maester Jonel. If dragons could be begged to Winterfell's sky? She sighed. Even if Daenerys sails tomorrow, months might pass. We have only ourselves. Jon rose. Then ourselves must suffice. We march a relief force south, enough to break Bolton lines, but not so many as to leave the wall thin. Volunteers only. Meanwhile, Sam and Jonel refine forging of dragonglass steel. Ygritte, you oversee defenses here. She opened mouth to protest. Please, he added softly but firm. The bridge. She swallowed anger. Fine. But if you die, I'll drag you from grave and kill you twice for leaving me. He smiled, touched her cheek. Deal. Dawn before departure, Jon visited the crypt beneath the Night Fort ruins, where rumor spoke of a secret gate. With him walked Sam, carrying old brass lantern. They descended spiral stairs thick with spider silk. Beneath damp stone they entered a cavern, walls carved by ancient hands older than the first men. At its heart, in a pool of black water, stood an anvil fashioned of dragonglass, riddled by cracks. Sam whispered translations of runes. Here the watch forged the night's bane. Here blood and flame were wed. Jon ran his palm over the anvil. It vibrated faintly, resonant. Possibility thrummed. If Dragonfire touched this, new blades might be born. Hope sparked once more. They sealed the crypt, swearing secrecy till the time came. The host that rode south numbered 200. 100 Knights Watch Rangers, 50 Free Folk Archers, 20 Spearwives Lightfoot and Deadly, 10 East Watch Marines versed in siege ropes, 10 Smiths bearing mobile forges, and 10 Ravens for swift word. Ghost loped ahead. Tormund led Free Folk column. Jon rode shaded by a borrowed black bear pelt. Ygritte saw them out the gate, facade stern. But when Jon bent to kiss her, she pressed a bone dagger into his hand. Scrimshawed handle, obsidian blade. If an arrow fails you, use this, she said. He gripped the hilt. I'll return. See you do, she whispered, voice thick. They parted under watchful eyes of sergeants. Snow-gray sky loomed but wind hushed, as though world itself inhaled. 3 days south, near Queen's Crown ruins, they found dead, flayed corpses of civilians nailed to trees. Bolton work. Tormund hacked them down, burned them, cursed lords who wore manskin. Morale grew grim. Scouts reported Bolton's supply convoy crossing a frozen lake at night, guarded by 20 horse. Jon ambushed, capturing wagons of bread, dried beef, barrels of ale. They distributed food to Stannis' starving camp under cover of dark. Knights awed by Free Folk archers ghosting through drift. Crab King Davos Seaworth clasped Jon's arm. My king thanks you, he said, but Bolton walls still stand. Jon planned midnight assault on an auxiliary gate. One Bolton had neglected, trusting snowdrifts. Free Folk silent stepped across ramparts, scaled with ice pegs. Minutes before horns sounded, Jon stood upon Winterfell's parapet beside Tormund, staring down at courtyard where flayed banners fluttered. He had dreamed as boy he might stand here as Stark, yet never so. Baratheon men stormed main gate with war cries. Inside, Jon's team flung pitch bombs, lighting towers ablaze. Chaos erupted. Bolton men scattered. In the Godswood, Ramsay stalked, eyes wild, crossbow loaded with blackshaft corals tipped in poison. He spotted Jon, loosed. The bolt sang. Jon ducked behind heart tree root. Wood thunked with lethal thud. Fire reflected in Ramsay's eyes. He knocked again. but an arrow from behind took his hand. Free folk arrow with raven fletch. Ygritte's style. Except Ygritte remained at wall. This shaft belonged to spearwife named Sorna, once of the frozen shore, now grinning feral. She knocked second arrow. Ramsay fled limping. Jon gave chase through snow-clotted cloisters. They clashed beside kennels where starving hounds snarled behind bars. Ramsay drew knife, slashed wild. Jon parried with bone dagger Ygritte gifted, its dragonglass edge carving cloth and flesh. Ramsay stumbled. Hounds howled. Jon slammed kennel latch open. Starved beasts lunged, dragging Bolton bastard screaming into pen. Jon turned away. By dawn, Bolton surrendered or died. Winterfell sacked, banners of flayed man torn down. Stannis claimed Hall, though Northmen grumbled at Southern King. Yet gratitude toward knights watch soared. Free folk fighters earned nods of wary respect. In broken feast hall, Jon sat exhausted opposite Stannis. Fires guttered in brazier barrels. Stannis, leaner than last meeting, regarded Jon with that piercing, honest stare. "You wage war beyond your vows," he said. "I wage defense of realm," Jon replied hoarse. Bolton fed the dead by scattering refugees. Left wall weakened. Stannis inclined head. "Well argued. You saved my army, Snow. Yet I suspect you seek something in return." Jon steadied breath. "Dragons. If your red woman speaks true of visions, bid them ride north." Stannis's gaze flicked to Melisandre, who lingered near pillar, eyes blazing ruby. "The flames whisper names," the woman murmured. "They show a sword of living fire held by a man reborn beneath a bleeding star." Jon felt uncomfortable heat in chest but kept voice even. "Living fire stands little chance if forged too late. Time is our foe." Stannis drummed fingers. "I will dispatch envoys to Essos. No promise more. My claim on Iron Throne waits." Jon bowed head. A start. That evening, letters arrived from Castle Black by Raven, Ygritte's hand. Rebels among the watch, led by Bowen Marsh, questioned Jon's authority, citing collusion with wildlings, theft of rations, oath-breaking by riding south. Tensions seethed. Ygritte feared knives in dark. Jon burned letter after reading. He convened his captains. "We ride home at once," he declared, though bodies ached and snow thickened. Tormund protested. Stannis needed them to garrison, but Jon shook head. "The wall first." Davos understood, clasped his forearm. They left Winterfell 2 nights later, leaving Stannis to hold battered castle with Karstark reinforcements who'd switch sides on seeing Bolton death. Free folk spirits high, but Jon's heart heavy. 30 leagues out, as they traversed Isla's hills under blizzard moon, a rider approached flying black banner of crow. It was Ed Tollett, half frozen, eyes red. "Mutiny," he croaked. "Bowen struck at night. Ygritte wounded. Arrow shoulder, she lives barely. Marsh claims you abandoned your post. They hold her in King's Tower." Rage like molten iron coursed Jon's veins. He spurred on, host following at breakneck pace despite storm. At dawn the wall spired into view, gleaming cruel blue under thin sun. No smoke curled from new hearth. Jon's heart hammered. As they drew near, figures dotted battlements, crossbows aimed outward. Ghost raced ahead, white blur. Jon approached gate alone. Helm off, shouting, "Open to your Lord Commander." Marsh's voice answered, quavering, "Jon Snow broke vows. He brings wildlings to kill us." Jon raised hands. "Look beside me. Rangers loyal, Bolton defeated, supplies captured. Let us in." "Ygritte lies dying," Marsh cried. "She bewitched men, murdered brothers." Tormund boomed, "I'll murder you if she dies." Arrows thumped ground. "Standoff." Jon breathed deep. "Bowen, this is folly. The others come. If we divide now, we're dead." Sudden horns blared from atop the wall. 3 blasts. Every heart faltered. Jon seized chance. "Bowen," he roared. "Open or perish." The dead ride. Cries erupted on parapets as watchers spotted silhouettes on northern horizon. Long line of pale riders gliding over snow, flanked by lumbering giants shrouded in ice armor. Fear cracked mutineers' resolve. Gates creaked. Jon's host poured in, seizing weapons from stunned rebels. He sprinted to King's Tower, 2 stairs at a time, ghost snarling ahead. At top chamber, Ygritte lay on cot, Maester Jonel redressing wound, her face drawn but determined. Ygritte's eyes opened when Jon knelt. Relief melted her pain. "Missed the heart this time," she rasped. He pressed forehead to hers. "Never leave again," he murmured. "Then stay alive," she answered. Jon rose, storm boiling inside. Bowen Marsh was dragged before him, bound. Jon looked into frightened eyes of man once friend. "Your fear might kill us all. Tonight you fight beside us or die now." He left judgment suspended, ordering him to walls. Hours later the host assembled. Crows, free folk, former mutineers side by side. On the horizon, white mist roiled, shapes legion. Jon donned direwolf helm, lifted long claw. Ygritte, bandaged but defiant, strung bow at his side. Tormund hefted hammer. Sam distributed last caches of dragonglass blades. Snow began to fall, large and silent. Jon's voice rang across ramparts. "Men of the Night's Watch, free folk, Southerners and Northerners. Tonight we stand not as clans or orders but as the living. Remember the bridge you walk. It is made of us all. Hold fast." A roar answered, half terror, half fury. Ygritte laid arrow to string, whispered, "Let them come," and so they did. An army of death, banners of frost, horns of ice. The battle for the living began upon that fragile bridge of trust and flame, under a sky of bleeding green lights, and every heartbeat, every arrow, every sword stroke vowed the same unspoken oath. This night the bridge would not fall. Snow churned, blades clashed, and somewhere in the maelstrom Jon Snow and Ygritte fought back to back. Lovers turned legends, their story still unwritten in drifting flakes, a tale of fire daring to stand against the endless cold.